with Ryan.
Today, we are learning basketball with Mirin Fader, New York Times best-selling author of Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an NBA Champion. She's a sports writer with The Ringer, formerly of Bleacher Report and the Orange County Register, touted as one of the best American sports writers, with honors all over from Pro Basketball Writers Association, Associated Press sports editors, U.S. Basketball Writers Association, and she's done some of my favorite deep dive profiles. Really digs in there, humanizes athletes as well as any writer I've ever read. One of the best storytellers, covering these players' stories as human beings, the challenges, the ups and downs they go through on their paths to becoming pros. Some of my favorite articles on Evan Mobley, Onyeka Okongwu, Michael Porter Jr., Jabari Smith Jr., with the Ringer and Bleacher Report. So just some of my favorite articles out there. And of course, what we're here to talk about, the author of the brand new book, Dream, The Life and Legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon. So can't wait to talk. How are you doing today, Mirin?
Same. I'm good. It's so nice to finally meet you. And thanks for that super kind intro.
Hey, it's well deserved. I mean, you're one of the best sports writers out here. I love your work. I try to take a little bit of, especially that humanizing side of things. I think that's really rare in sports writing nowadays, especially. And it just feels like the classics. Like it never gets old trying to tell a player's story, hit some of those, classic writing themes like the hero's journey. You can almost feel it at the rise and fall and rise again of some of these players' arcs. So it's super cool to finally meet. I appreciate you taking the time today to really dig in.
Yeah, no, thanks again. Let's do it.
No doubt. So I thought we could hit on a few of your other articles as well first, and even the Giannis book, but I'd love to, dig into that deeper at another time as well. But, what really, I want to start with like what really inspires you, I guess, to write about a certain player. Like what are you looking for in a player to decide, there's a story here. I sense a theme of humility in all of these players that you write about. Like that really stands out. And also just, it seems like defensive versatility is something you, or maybe we both have in common, because those are the articles I'm attracted to like read to about. So what is it about these players that stand out that make you want to write about them in the first place?
Yeah, no, that's really well said. I do love the humble players. I do love the resilient, hardworking, driven. I just love the human story, right? Like there's so many amazing athletes. I mean, look at your wall. There's many, many amazing athletes right there, right? But what separates people is, the mental stuff and the journey and what somebody's gone through. And so for me, if I'm going to invest in a story, I've got to make the reader care about this person, like truly care about them individually. And the next time you see them on TV, I want you to think, okay, that person's story was like this, or this upbringing was like that. And so it's just trying to, unpack the things that people aren't talking about, right? Because there's going to be endless discussion of stats and, what somebody does on the floor. There are like way smarter people than me that can do those conversations. But what I can do is try to get to the heart of a story and try to tell something really meaningful beyond the game. So that's at least my hope when I set out.
And so I saw that you played a little college ball as well.
I did. I was like, you caught me after my workout. I'm like, just lifted. So I don't know if this is video or not, but sorry if I came a little fresh off the workout. But yes, like I've been an athlete my whole life. I played my first year in college, Lewis and Clark College. That's what's just been my life since I was 10 years old. I love it. I will always love it. I wanted to be in the WNBA. I'm very short. I'm 5'0", so that did not happen. So I did the next best thing, and I wrote about it.
Yeah, you kept that competitive fire to
right.
on the reporting side. And speaking of that, I've when I was researching a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've done over like 486 interviews for these two books, like reporting. Is that right? Did I add that up correctly? Like over 200 a piece?
Probably, yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
find the time, and also what kind of drives you to get so many sources to really round out these stories?
Yeah, man. You're right. You did the math correctly. I was just thinking, yeah, 266 for this one. I think that that is what makes a story complete. Like, it's one thing to get the individual's perspective, excuse me, but it's another thing to ask people about that person, right? Because we're all biased. If you asked me about my life, I would be like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about that. Or maybe we should talk about this. But the other people around me have interactions and memories with me, and they're better able to tell those stories. And so, I remember with the Giannis book, just like sitting in my apartment, that was during the pandemic, and just calling anyone who would talk to me. Same with this one. It's just like next person, next call, next person, next call. And every time I call somebody, I say, okay, who do I talk to? And so I think that that also kind of excites the person you're talking to, because they're like, okay, this person cares about making this narrative as complete as possible, right? Like, we've got to have a lot of different perspectives. I also think it's the joy of it. Like, I just basically got to call up a lot of NBA legends for this book and be like, what is the worst that dream ever shook you? You know? So I was having fun. It was work. It was very hard work. Don't get me wrong, but I was having a lot of fun.
It sounds like the intro to Q Rich and Darius Miles podcast.
Right.
Like started off with like, all right, how did who like broke you into the league? Like
Right.
who welcomed you to the league?
Exactly.
It sounds like
Exactly.
that. So I have a funny story about the Giannis book, and in addition to just how beautifully written it was and just a great sports story, I tweeted out it was like an illuminating biography, so many detailed stories, sharing his real life hardships and tension, an instant classic page turner about especially with his family and perseverance and hope just being themes throughout every chapter. And so it's kind of funny. I was on a flight on the way back from a wedding from one of my friends from college, and it's like a 4-hour flight from Rhode Island to Florida. And right as we're pulling up to like 4 hours go by, we're entering Orlando, and then the weather hits, the storm hits, and it's like, all right, we can't land. We're gonna go circle over the water and see how long this takes to land. And I'm like already a little anxious flying in general. That's not what I want to hear while we're on the
Right.
flight. So I have your book in my backpack, and I didn't get a chance to crack it open yet during the wedding and all that. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna throw myself into this book. I'm gonna see where this takes me. I'm gonna zone out everything else. And literally another 4 hours go by. They had to go to like Miami to refuel and come back up. So, but I don't have a care in the world because I'm lost in this book. Like it what life saving is a big word, but it at least saved my sanity for this time to just read about Giannis's hardships, his beginnings, and what he had to go through. I'm like, I can handle a little plane ride. It's just a delay. Like this,
Oh my
was
God.
total perspective changing. So I just had to share that with you. I thought it was really funny introduction. It really made me appreciate, just how hardships for him, and then how easy I might have had it in that real time, just waiting more than anything else. So yeah, I landed safely. I'm still here today talking to you.
Oh,
So
thank
we made
God.
it. We made it.
Wow, I that is literally one of the greatest stories I have ever heard in my life. Thank you so much. And dude, like we've been like online friends for a while, and so it's just so nice to see you in person. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's so funny. Like, and I personally I fly a lot, and I'm like, I have the worst luck of all time. The plane is gonna get grounded, turned around, delayed, canceled, whatever. And so I lose myself in a book, and to think that somebody could do that with my book is really touching. Thank you.
Oh, hey, I mean, it saved me that day, that no doubt. And then I was hooked at that point. I couldn't put it down when I got back. My dad too really fell into it. He
Oh,
almost became like more of a Giannis fan because of the book and just reading about especially the family themes and perseverance. And
mm,
speaking of the book, I
yeah,
read in an article. I want to say it was a Washington Post article, but now I forget that the idea for the story came from you writing a story about his brother Alex, and you
yeah.
just happened to kind of land an interview with Giannis in that moment, and then all of a sudden, you now think, there might be a book here. So how do you go from kind of making the decision between like I'm going to cover this person for an article versus, you know what, I actually think there might be a whole book here.
Yeah, it's such a like it's kind of like you're playing. Like sometimes shit just happens and it's crazy. I didn't think I would ever meet Giannis, and he's
Right.
just like in the house. And I knew they like lived together, but I just assumed that I would never meet Giannis. I mean, he was a budding superstar. He wasn't like Giannis, but he was still, Giannis. And so I was very intimidated, very excited. And I was not thinking anything book-wise until after the piece came out. Honestly, it's just kind of that old saying in journalism, like, if the story takes you somewhere, go with it. And the story was telling me it was about more than Alex, it was about both of them. And when I wrote the piece, it ended up being so much about both of them. And so I just kept kind of going with it and letting it take me there. And then when it came out, the response was basically like, wow, that is a family story right there. Right. And now we all know that, like, duh. But back then, there wasn't much about them. It's not nationally. They weren't as front facing as they are now. So, I had been wanting to write a book for a really long time and I just couldn't find the right topic. It's very hard to find the right topic and also get a book publisher to want to have your book. There's just all these levels of politics that make it really difficult. And I had been trying and failing for years. And when this came out, I finally found an agent that, I really liked and he respected me. And he was like, I think this could be a book. And I realized like there was so much from my interviews that I didn't include in the story because you can't write 10,000 word stories, so it was cut about half of that. And I was like, okay, there's so much here. And so that's when the process began.
It sounds great. I'm jealous you finally got through and made it happen. Like you got someone on your side to say there's a real book here. And
Right.
I'd love to take a deep dive another time into in the Giannis book, but just to hit on some of it, like just his upbringing and what his family went through was, just unfathomable to think about. He was like 6 years old, I think, is when he started just trying to like sell trinkets or sunglasses on the
Yeah.
street to try to help his family and really just to get by. And one very small detail that stood out from like some things that he missed out on growing up was when he came over to this country and asked, I think it was John Henson, it looks like, what are these little square things in the drink? It's like,
Right.
those are ice.
Okay. Can I tell you something about these ice cubes?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Reddit AMAs. So I did a Reddit AMA. And I remember at the time, somebody was like, that's bullshit. Everybody knows what an ice cube is. And I was like, okay, dude, whatever, whatever people are going to say. But I went to London and Paris this summer, and there was hardly an ice cube to be found. So I finally feel validated with the European lack of ice cubes. Okay. So I just want to say that ice is not really what it is here. Okay.
Like air, breathing air here, you'll find it just about anywhere. So it just maybe it's more of an American thing than I really realized. And
Right. I was like, does anybody have iced coffee? Like, and then I got one and they gave me like one cube and I'm like, this is not going to do it. Anyways.
Well, iced coffee, please. Not just literally ice.
Come on.
One. And it was, stood out in the book how like excited he would get learning new things. Like he just loved the yo mama jokes.
Right.
Learn that.
Pure. So pure.
So pure, exactly. And even down to practicing Westbrook's scowl that he like really wanted to own as his own because he was such a positive guy. He wasn't mean enough on the court, so he had to steal Westbrook's look with the scowl. So shout out to Giannis, incredible player. Check out the book. It's an all timer. You got to. So let's hop in here to Dream. The Hakeem himself, the full title is Dream, The Life and Legacy of Hakeem Olajuwon. It looks like that right behind me. Bam. That's how it's done.
I gotta do a little bit better. Your bookshelf is killing mine. I got Dream is behind me.
I see it. There it is. I see it. Put them both up top.
Nice. I gotta put it a little higher, huh?
Yeah.
You might just have inspired me.
You gotta show it off. I mean, they're all timers. And I think, so there's a ton of themes to jump into with the Dream book, but, one thing that really stood out is just how great of a player he is, and how kind of, like you mentioned, his legacy almost gets lost just a tad in these all-time talks when you really think about what he's capable on the court. Like, there just isn't anyone like him. The only one close to him that we've seen since is Joel Embiid, who almost followed in his footsteps a little bit, studying his game really young. But in terms of Hakeem's play, like when you think of like two-way impact on the basketball court and two-way versatility, and there's just no one like him. Like he was someone that could protect the rim, switch 1 through 5, and beat you with skill on the offensive end, like where the dream shake is essentially like fake outs 3 different ways into like a counter Dirk fadeaway or a Jokic baseline fadeaway in a lot of ways, where he's the fulcrum of the offense. They ended up building an entire offense around him almost before its time with Coach Rudy T, where they're playing 4 out with 1 in. And that's like modern day offense. It's not far off from what the Warriors do with Draymond and shooting all around him, or even Dwight back in the day on the Magic teams with shooting all around him. That was really the first of its kind. So just to hit some crazy accolades for Hakeem, the only player ever to win MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and the NBA championship in one season. He's still first time all time in blocks and top 10 in steals as a center. First and only player to record 200 blocks and 200 steals in a season. And you mentioned he had a quadruple double, the third ever, 18, 16, 11, and 10. And this was 13 games after having almost another quadruple double, 29, 18, 11, 9, and 5. So like, how can you, just to sum up his game, like what should he be remembered as for his legacy on the court as a basketball player?
Yeah, I mean, those stats are incredible, right? As you were saying it, I was like, holy shit, yeah, he is that guy. I think it's the creativity. Very few players create moves, right? The iconic skyhook from Kareem. But, Hakeem created this dream shake, and yet he was not limited to offense. He was just as great of a defensive player. It's very rare to have something you said earlier, just players that are passionate about defense. I think Hakeem will be remembered for, changing the way that centers play basketball. No longer big and bulky and slow. They got to move, they got to shoot, they got to be agile. I mean, he was the one that really started positionless basketball, in my view, and he just doesn't get enough credit for that. So I hope, when people read this book, especially younger generations, which includes myself, I was just a baby when he was on his tear in the early 90s, just know like what an amazing player he was, and also how it really affected how we play today.
Right. I mean, I love the way you put it in the book as well, like where he describes the dream shake specifically to be almost like art for him, like to keep someone frozen, not knowing which way you're going to go. That is art. And he said, I'm not an artist who paints or draws. I look at basketball like an artist looks at painting. When you look at basketball as an artist, you get so much joy from the takes and the creativity. That is the part that's so much fun. It's like the block was his paintbrush, or the court his canvas, to sum it up, and all the symmetry there. And we got to give a small shout out to this. Is something I learned was Yommy basket. That's
Hmm.
where a big, friend of his, a player he grew up playing with, that was someone that really inspired this dream shake move to Hakeem to take it to another level. And maybe you also talked to, I think, his wife about how like it almost, she said it was created from both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was one of the really exciting parts, I think, of the reporting is like, inspiration comes from many places. And while I do think that, soccer and handball and other sports really helped with the moves and the soccer like, quickness, this player that you mentioned, Yommy Basket, whose full name was Yommy Sangodeyi, he was a Nigerian star. He was amazing. I mean, he ended up playing overseas for many years. He was a FIBA Hall of Famer. Just he was the person that Hakeem looked up to. It was his brother, his mentor. And so a lot of the coaches and teammates that I spoke to from Nigeria basically said, it was Yomi that was doing the shake while Hakeem was growing up. Like he saw him do a little shimmy. So I just thought that was so beautiful, right? Like if this book is really about giving flowers, right? Like saying to the world, hey, Hakeem was this player we should talk about more. Got to give the flowers to those that inspired him. And Yomi was like a central person that did that.
Absolutely, and I love that you also brought up his handball experience. That was something else
Right?
that really impressed me. Like he played every sport except basketball as a kid, with especially soccer and handball, even a little field hockey, track, volleyball, table tennis. How do you think that range of experience helped develop his skills? And you hit on it throughout the whole book with his hand-eye coordination, his fluidity, agility, timing, mobility, footwork, pivoting, spatial awareness, and it instantly makes me think of I think it was David Epstein's book Range, where he
Exactly.
highlights these other authors or all these other athletes that just have this range of experience that not everyone is Tiger Woods or Venus and Serena Williams that play golf and tennis their entire life. That sometimes the range of experience, especially as an athlete, you can pick things up from other sports that help you create new skills in the sport you end up playing as a pro.
Right. Yeah, no, and I'm so glad you brought up that book. That book was so good and it's exactly right. I also think when you don't focus on one single sport your whole life, you save your body in a lot of ways. I mean, Olajuwon did have injuries, but I believe, he was as durable as he was in the most physical era of basketball. And part of that is because, he did not specialize his whole life. So I think, of course, in addition to all the things you named about agility and quickness and all of that, it really just allowed his body to stay fresh. Think about it. Like he starts basketball at age 17. That's pretty remarkable to ascend as far as he did. And I think those other sports kind of helped with that athleticism and court vision. It was just now applied to a different game.
Right. I mean, that's definitely his age and how quickly he picked up skills, especially as a big man, was one of the more impressive things that I didn't totally realize. That like a year and a half before college, he just started playing the game, and then like another 2 years go by, and he's an all-star in the NBA. Like
Right.
the rapid development from all those skills to just become such a skilled player without playing his whole life is just the most insane thing ever when you think like where he ended up as one of the most skilled centers, one of the most skilled players to ever play the game.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and I think it goes back to, like, being coachable, right? Like, nobody makes it alone. He gets better so quickly because he has so many incredible mentors in his life, and I honestly think that, the way we'd see him mentor other players from, Kobe to LeBron to Giannis, I really think that's so much because he had this great example set for him where people cared about him, like Moses Malone and, the Rudy Tomjanovich and Carol Dawson, the coaches at the Rockets, Guy V. Lewis at the University of Houston. So it's like he had all these examples of people helping him, and I think that really influenced the way he'd help others.
Absolutely, he's known for this to this day as just a legendary mentor, and I'm glad you brought up all those different names. And you can like visualize the way you describe the scene. You can picture the dirt road with the pine and oak
Oh
trees
my god.
highway,
Right.
miles of grassy land leading up to this big old ranch of a it's a livestock barn turned into like a state of the art basketball gym where he was Kobe and all these legends, different moves. So I love the imagery writing in there, and then I'm glad you mentioned all the mentors and coaches because even back in Nigeria, I believe it was Coach OBJ,
Yep. Yep.
some other coaches that like really impacted him. And I guess I was wondering if there was one coach that stood out the most, or like you said, is it kind of a mix?
Definitely. I mean, thank you for bringing up Coach OBJ. I mean, I think they were all amazing, but I really, really love talking with Coach OBJ because he is such an interesting person. Not only did he coach Hakeem, he coached Masai Ujiri. And Masai Ujiri has now then also taken that same circular approach of giving back with his own program called Giants of Africa, right? So there is this circular energy between all of them that says, hey, whatever gifts I have and have been given, I give on to the next generation. So, Coach OBJ is really a foundational person in Nigerian basketball. I think Nigeria doesn't get as much credit for its basketball as, say, other countries that, have more success, like Angola is a powerhouse, or Senegal. And there's a lot of French players and connections there. But I think that what Coach OBJ built and is continuing to build all over Nigeria is something really, really special that I wanted to, again, like give him his flowers, like talk about him and what he's doing, because it's really awesome. He kind of talked about how he'd like go through the neighborhoods, like where Hakeem lived, and just ask kids to play for him. And, and now there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of kids playing there. It's really cool.
He's definitely an incredible figure from what, and you can read all about this in the book. And another huge theme that you hit on is the impact of Islam on Hakeem's life, and just how he's I don't have the name of the center in front of me, but I'm sure you know it. How he ended up starting.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was it?
Yeah, the Da'Wag Center in Houston. Absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, that was like his first real estate project, was taking over this old building that had been abandoned and opening it up for Muslims in Houston and everyone to gather and learn about Islam. And another theme was how he was seen as like immature and almost like a teammate that would be ready to be a little combative early on in his career. And then he went and kind of refound Islam that he grew up with. And that really changed his perspective on life to just be more grateful. And I think it was like happiness is from within, and not to put too much on the external things. And it just totally changed his perspective on everything. And, he it led to him being the humble, respected, principled ambassador of his God and the game, not confident, but not cocky type of, person he's remembered as today. So, what would you say the impact of Islam had on him, and then his impact on the world as an ambassador spreading Islam?
Yeah, I think Islam gave him a spiritual anchor. I think anchor is a word that I thought about a lot when I was writing that section. It gave him a discipline. It gave him a purpose. Like, life is about so much more than basketball, and all those ejections and things that he was going through on the court, everything just like calmed down. And a lot of the coaches and teammates that I talked to said, they're not sure if he would have had the success he would have had with those 2 titles later if he had not returned to his religion. And so it was just something that gave him like a structure to his life, right? It's more than a religion, it's a lifestyle. So I love that. And if you then think about the impact, for him to tell American press, I am fasting because it's Ramadan. Here's what Ramadan is. That was such a like educational thing that, not a lot of people knew what that was. It was a different era. It's pre 9/11. Like, people were super ignorant too, as well, back then. And so many Muslim Americans that I'd spoken to, especially from Houston, said it gave us confidence. It gave us so much joy to see somebody from our community talking about our religion on the big screen in such loving ways. And it's really beautiful. I mean, I tried to include as many of those stories as I could, because, a lot of biographies don't talk to everyday people, but I think that's the joy. That's the joy of a person's success, right? Is like, how do you impact communities? And so this book is just filled with people saying, the way that he spread this religion, it made such a difference. It made us feel like we belonged. It made us feel like we had somebody to root for, somebody that made us feel like it was okay to be ourselves. So I think, God, it's amazing all the stats he accomplished, all the things that you've, outlined in your podcast, but really like the fact that he's achieved so much off the court, I think is just so important.
Absolutely. Like, clearly an ambassador of the game, and an ambassador of the world, just trying to, make the world a better place. And you mentioned, and he helped like kind of normalize being a positive influence role model of someone of a Muslim of the Islam faith, and Ramadan specifically. Like, at first he would wait during the NBA season to not practice it. And then he found out Mahmoud Abdul Rauf did. And he's like, oh, well, now if you're going to do it, I got to do it.
I like competitiveness.
During Ramadan, and he started, he would fast from sunrise to sunset, no water, no food. And he would get better almost. He averaged 30 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, 3 blocks, and won NBA Player of the Month, losing 10 pounds in the process. In your book, it says, wow, the first time he did this and put up these huge games like 32, 16, 5, 4, and 4, to end Chicago's 9-game winning streak. He put up a 48-10 game in 43 minutes, all while never having a sip of water. And like Jordan said, he's unsolvable. Or Barkley said, to be able to play like that without water for the whole game. It's one of the most amazing things he's seen in his life. So I mean, it's just insane what he was able to accomplish during those times.
Oh my God. I don't know about you, but like if I skip a meal, I will kill somebody. I can't function. So the fact that he's out here just dropping 40 on the best centers of all time without a single, not just food, but literally his teammates would be like, Dream, just have one drop of water, one drop. And he's like, I can't. No, not a single drop. So I mean, it's just wow. Like I'm sure we both know people in our lives who are, really faithful and committed to their religion, but Dream's devotion is beyond anything that I've ever seen. It's quite remarkable.
It's unfathomable. We can't, have a Hakeem podcast without saying, he might be Houston's all-time athlete. What kind of impact do you think he had on the city of Houston from Phi Slama Jama with Clyde Drexler going to 3 straight Final Fours, all the way to winning a championship with Clyde Drexler in Houston, right, just over a decade later, full circle moment for him. What kind of impact did he leave on Houston?
He gave Houstonians the right to puff their chest out and believe that they belong and are worthy, right? Houston has suffered for decades, always coming up short. So many moments. And Hakeem comes along and he's like, no, the pride is here. We're going to win. We are winners. And so no matter if they never win again, I saw that game yesterday, the Rockets opener, it doesn't look great. It's going to be a long time. Rockets fans, don't come at me. I think he just gave them a pride and a confidence like, oh yeah, we did that, and even though to this day it's still disrespected, people say, oh, you only won because Michael Jordan wasn't around. Oh, this only because of that. Well, I think the fact that to this day, Houston fans, you never hear somebody say they should have drafted Michael Jordan is such a testament to how they feel about Hakeem, because it wasn't just the 2 titles he gave them, which is awesome. It was the fact that like you could see him in the community and he'd say hi to your family and be a nice person. Like these are things that you don't see typical of people of his stature. And he just like walks around Houston to this day, just like a normal person in the community. And I think people really love and respect that. Kind of eerie. I saw those pictures of Giannis just walking around Milwaukee with his son, and the person posting it was like, can't believe he doesn't have security. And it's like, I mean, that's who they are. They're just normal people.
Yeah, I mean, that really stood out just there, especially in the Hakeem, the Dream book, just their like openness to wanting to talk to anybody, anytime, and just share their story, get to know them. And it's like he always wanted to be learning about people, about subjects, whatever it was. Like he, moved to Jordan after his career and started learning Arabic for his religion, and
Right.
like just having college students see this 40-year-old 7-foot guy, like NBA legend, just going to class like everybody else.
A little backpack over the shoulder. That's like LeBron like going to a school near me. I would die.
Yeah. Just imagine him with the one strap, just kicking
right.
college
just going to class.
It's hilarious to see. And I know we're running out of time here, so I'll ask you one last thing kind of about Rudy T. I guess I want to know is like what was his relationship ultimately with Hakeem? I think the book outlines that he was the one to kind of innovate the offense, put 4 shooters around one big, and how the theme of those Rockets teams were almost the volatility of the 3-ball and forcing trailing early, but being able to force these big comebacks from the first round in 95, series tied 2-2 in a 5-game series. They're down 12. They dug deep, and they come back after Hakeem sinks an impossible shot. Drexler takes over. Then again, down 3-1, second round of the Suns. Drexler's got the flu. They rally and win a close one by a double-digit win to force another Game 7. And then, Hakeem's like confidence comes out against David Robinson the next round, where the Admiral won MVP, doesn't thank Hakeem during the speech, and Hakeem just drops 40 points, 16 boards, and then 43 points, and then 20 and 14, and then 42-9, 8 and 5, 39-17, 5, Game 6 to advance to the finals. So, what was that coaching scheme like? How much impact did that have kind of on Hakeem's basketball legacy?
I mean, huge. Hakeem doesn't win without Rudy. Rudy is the first coach that says, okay, I'm going to coach, based on the personnel that I have, not the system that I just want, but around who's my talent. And so Hakeem is finally able to thrive in ways he hadn't because he is given that space. You brought up the spacing, the innovative way Rudy did that we now see in basketball all the time. I mean, that was unheard of at the time. And so, also he surrounded Hakeem with better teammates who can make shots. So when Hakeem would throw the ball out from a double or triple team, they would knock down the three. But I think the biggest impact is emotionally. Rudy saw him grow up. I mean, he saw him from hot-headed, getting ejected from games. Rudy would be the one escorting him out to the locker room all the way up till, past the championships. 2008, I believe, Hakeem gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. Hakeem calls Rudy over the phone and says, "This is for us. Like, thank you." And that's just so beautiful. On your biggest moment, you thank your coach who helped you get there. I think that says everything about them.
Absolutely. And I mean, all these coaches had such an impact, like Pete Newell from the big
Yeah,
man's camp on his footwork to Guy Lewis teaching him the power step at college
right,
and posting up, running without dribbling, and fundamentals like Coach OBJ we mentioned. I hope I get his name right. Coach Otenik Bade and
yep,
Coach Hero. Some other coaches that really helped him in Nigeria grow up there. And we might as well mention, even though I'm a Magic fan, he did sweep my Shaq's Magic in to win a finals, and he did beat Ewing. Year appreciate it. I needed to hear that. Like he went up against the best centers, and he almost had no peers in the era of centers, like when
right,
the all-time centers were around, and he caught Kareem at the tail end of his career. Kareem was crazy impressed. David Robinson had no answer for him. Shaq said it was one of the most, maybe the player he had the most trouble with
right.
growing up, and Shaq was hugely respectful of the dream at all times. So, Hakeem's an all-time talent. He should be remembered easily top 20 player all time, maybe even higher. I mean, maybe top 10.
Yeah,
You can make the case, and just skill wise, I really don't know if there's anyone that compares to like his mobility, his footwork, his tough shot making skills, his passing vision, eventually learning to kick out on double teams, knowing the ball might come back to him, combined with that defensive versatility and his ability to force turnovers and be a rim protector who can switch out and also rank top 10 all time in steals like you listed. So, he should be remembered as something like that. And I just want to shout you out for taking the time today. And I appreciate you hopping on this pod to talk about your book.
yeah. Thanks for the wonderful interview and all your questions. It was really fun, and we'll do it again for book 3.
Oh,
You
hey,
know.
hold you. You're making it happen. Thanks a lot for taking the time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
With Ryan.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast, hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's website, theswishtheory.com.